On this week's episode of Comics Controllers, we talk about some of the worst comics we've ever read, and an underlying theme that they all seem to have. We also talk about video game franchises we'd love to see rebooted, and we answer a listener's question. All that and more on this, episode 12, Trouble with Comics. Welcome back to another episode of Comics and Controllers. As always, I'm Kyle, joined by my co-host Steven.
How's it going?
It's going pretty good, Steven. So this week, there really wasn't a lot of news, necessarily comic book or video game-wise. So what we wanted to do was kind of just talk about things that we love and hate within each. And particularly, we wanted to talk about, for comics, ones that we have hated in the past.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'll kick off the hate train.
Okay.
And some of these people might, at least one of the ones I say some people might disagree with heavily. But one of the first ones I want to talk about is The Filth by Grant Morrison.
I know who Grant Morrison is. I'm a big fan, but I don't think I've ever actually read The Filth. Okay, so first off, Grant Morrison, pretty good writer. Mm-hmm.
When you place him on something with restraint.
I can agree with that.
You're like, hey, Grant, we want you to write an X-Men comic within these bounds. Okay, let me do it. He goes kind of balls to the wall, but he doesn't go too crazy. The Filth is his creator-owned and created property that is so just WTF that there were moments where I just did not even know what was really going on. And I don't even think he did. I think it was just like each issue was like just some drug-induced trip that he, took the reader through.
Yeah. See, this doesn't surprise me at all, because even some of his structured runs, like his more recent, pretty epic Batman run, that's pretty straightforward. And there were parts that I had no clue what was going on. So I can only imagine, like you said, if you don't give him a set of guidelines or something.
Well, sometimes I think he's from this school of writers that really likes to challenge the whole status quo of superhero comics. There's nothing wrong with that. It needs to be challenged from time to time, but sometimes I think he goes over the top just to go over the top to make people be like, what the hell? Because in this comic, one of the things he did that really got me was the whole concept of Filth is that, like, these people are police of reality because things are kind of going on, things that are messing stuff up that normal people can't even fathom, but, like, they're breaking down reality. And at one point, there's this guy who is a porn star, and his gimmick as a porn star is he has black semen.
Oh, okay.
And somebody else somewhere decides that they're going to use this in some kind of science or something that makes his black semen grow super huge and large, and they fly through the sky and they erupt through women's uteruses.
That sounds like Grant Morrison. Okay.
Yeah, and it's just so much garbage of just random ridiculous stuff like that. Well, don't get me wrong, when I read it, I'm like, this is ridiculous. And I still have that panel saved on my computer because I randomly send it to people when they talk about crazy things.
Of course.
I'm like, that's kind of crazy. But look at this. This is really crazy. But that's one of those ones, like, when people say, oh, I like Grant Morrison. Is there anything you could recommend by him? I was like, well, not this. Don't read it. This is a skip.
Is that how you usually recommend stuff? When somebody asks for recommendations, you start with what they shouldn't do?
It depends from time to time. If people are like, oh, man, I really liked his run on this and this and this. I've heard of this. Oh, man, don't read that. Just save yourself some time.
Right. Okay.
So that's my first one.
I may have to pick up a copy of that just because now I kind of want to experience it, but whatever.
I mean, it's not good. I mean, truthfully, I don't even know if I still own my copy. I think it's one of the ones I purged years ago.
You're probably right, and I may just see if I can find it for digital. Get it on like a 99-cent sale or something.
I don't know if they ever made it digital because it's fairly old.
That's true, yeah.
So,
all right, so what's another one?
So mine are all of mine too are from like major writers. So it's like I chose things that these major famous writers for comics have done that I didn't like.
Nothing wrong with that.
Okay, next one was Chris Claremont's run on Extreme X-Men. All right, so Chris Claremont, the man who saved the X-Men.
Yeah.
Okay, don't get me wrong. Back in the day, Chris Claremont wrote some really great stuff.
That's some amazing stuff.
But in the probably last 10 years or so, I wish someone would chop his hands off because he is just ruined things. He is so bad. Like, he cannot bring things to modern terms. And when he does, they have this creepy pseudo weird sexual want to be raped or rape people mentality to him. Like, I mean, I always heard stories about Chris Claremont and his, like, Storm sex fetish hiring hookers to dress up like Storm. Like,
okay. Even
you ever
even
heard
just
that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I think a lot of people in the comic industry have heard of that. But even with that aside, let's keep it to the comics for a second.
Okay. So what?
You can tell that he has some form of Storm fetish, I understand why, because of the time period that he was big and when he was writing and everything, but he has a weird obsession there.
Yeah, and I mean, and that really kind of plays out in Extreme X-Men because she's a major focus for most of it because she's one of the leaders of the team, and several times the comic just goes off on these weird Storm adventures.
Yeah.
In fact, the one that always comes to mind, the moment that I was like, why am I still spending money on this comic, was one when Storm met up with Yukio, who is one random Asian girl that every X-Men's ever had some kind of encounter with, who's a ninja.
Right.
I mean, there's so many of them in Marvel, it's hard to remember which one she is per se, but she was friends with Storm. And then they go into some kind of underground fighting ring, and it's all these, like, mostly women that they're fighting who are super powered.
Right. I vaguely remember this.
One of them is Callisto.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Another weird female character from X-Men who I think was a Claremont creation.
I think she was also in who is tied to Storm already.
Yes. And further, she does not have arms anymore. She just has a lot of tentacles.
That's right. I do remember that well.
No explanation.
I'd forgotten that.
No explanation except for, she's got tentacles. And whenever she's drawn, it's really weird because, like, if she's near Storm, like, the tentacles are, like, all, like, gropey. And it's so odd. It's just really uncomfortable. It's like one of those things, like, where you watch somebody doing something next to you, like, I'm really uncomfortable being around these people. I'm really uncomfortable reading that comic because of it. It's like I'm waiting for this to turn into some crazy Japanese hentai and Storm to be brutally molested by tentacled Callisto.
Okay.
It's really bad. And, like, don't get me wrong, I didn't think Extreme X-Men was ever really a great series, but, like, I was, like, just reading it because it was X-Men. That was what I liked. But near the later part of it, it got really bad. And it was Chris Claremont. It was just like he was challenging himself to write worse every issue.
I read I think I read the majority of Extreme X-Men. Mm-hmm. I know I didn't read it all, but I read a huge chunk of it. And I will say I liked what they did with a couple of characters. I'm a big fan of the character of Cannonball, and they, actually gave him a little bit more personality, and he kind of took over a little bit for a very brief time in the leadership role. But I remember it being really weird, because isn't that also the series where Wolverine gets his head cut off, and it's just close enough to where the blood actually pulls his head and his body back together?
I don't know. I remember that. I don't think that's Extreme X-Men.
That might not be Extreme. It was around that time period. Yeah.
That was probably... See, that was a really bad time for X-Men, because this is another one that was bad. But Chuck Austin was writing X-Men, too.
Oh, yeah.
And that was horrible. Like, it was like Claremont and Extreme X-Men, which was bad, and then Chuck Austin writing regular X-Men. The only redeeming factor was Grant Morrison was writing all new X-Men.
Right.
Which was the only X-Men comic you should read at that time.
Yeah, that was a good one.
I mean, there's stuff from that comic that still holds over to the day that Morrison did. The stuff that happened in Extreme and regular X-Men, none of it's important because it's not even still part of the universe.
Nope.
So, now I've got one more.
All right.
And this is one that I'm willing to bet most people have never even heard of.
Okay.
So, in 2000 and maybe 5, I think, 2004, Warren Ellis... creator of Transmetropolitan and all sorts of other amazing series, Planetary?
Yeah.
He's written a lot of stuff. He's written several novels. Probably my favorite comics writer. And just general personality. Seems like he's a really nice guy. Kind of a jerk, but probably still really nice if you're nice to him. He wrote these 4 one-shot comics for Avatar. And two of the 4 were good. I was like, wow, I'd read a series about these 2 characters. Because none of the one-shots had anything to do with each other. They were all their own little thing. Like, one was about this just regular detective guy who was kind of down and out. I think it was Frank Ironright, I think was that one. Then there's another one that was about a guy named Simon Spector, who was this kind of hyper-intelligent detective in another universe. Then there was one that was just a story about a runaway girl, which was really good. And then there was Angel Stomp Future. Okay, so
good build up.
Yeah, Angel Stomp Future was about this woman living in this crazy, super high-tech future world. And it was basically all the weird pseudo technology fetish stuff that Ellis loves to talk and write about, just crammed into 30 pages, to the point where at one it's like a 2-page spread of this girl is talking about people having sex with machines and getting mechanical STDs. I was like, okay, fair enough, whatever. And then there is a 2-page spread of a guy whose junk has been turned into some kind of machine based on it. And I was like, why is this in this comic? You can talk about this. I don't need to see it. Don't just boom, 2 pages. It was just like a joke they were pulling on the reader.
You paid to see this.
Yeah, and you know what's even worse is, so when in 2007 I think I went to Heroes Con and Warren Ellis was signing.
All right.
I had all 4 issues, all his one shots. I took all 4 of those. I was like, because I'd met him before and he had signed a bunch of stuff for me. And I was like, well, this time I'm going to take these 4. And I took 1 or 2 things with me. I stand in line. I put those out. And he looks. He's like, oh, my God, I've never seen someone who actually owned all 4 of these. I was like, oh, yeah. I was like, well, just because I own all 4 of them doesn't mean I liked all 4 of them. And he was like, understandable. Which one didn't you like? I was like, which one do you think I didn't like? He's like, probably Angel Stomp Future. That's one that nobody liked and sold the least. I was like, yeah, you're right.
At least he knows.
Well, he knows, because that's his thing. He does this super high-tech, ridiculous, weird tech fetish stuff.
Yeah.
And it's crazy. I mean, and it's one of those things it was one shot. I bought it. I think it was probably $4 because it's an Avatar comic. Mm-hmm. And I was like, well, 1 out of 4 bad. That's not, those aren't too terrible odds. I think I was all right. But yeah, so that's my 3. These were terrible comics. What were they thinking?
Yeah, and I'd like to point out that you just made a case for the old saying that you have to be kind of quirky or a little bit crazy to write comics. Because all 3 people that you just mentioned are, they're quirky as hell. Especially. Yeah. Claremont just probably has that weird storm fetish we talked about, and probably a couple others we don't want to know about.
Yeah, getting prostitutes to dress up like Storm and fist them.
Ah, Jesus.
That's the story for those of you who don't know. It's one of those ones that it's probably just this urban legend that's come from Marvel Comics, but multiple people from there have confirmed this weird fetish he has.
If I hadn't heard it from multiple sources, and I don't mean just some friends of mine, I'm talking about, people doing interviews. Yeah, stuff like that, yeah.
So, all right, Steven.
All right,
what do you hate? Lay it on us.
All right. The first one is a book that was printed, I want to say in the late 90s or so, but was reprinted in 2013, and it was one I was really looking forward to because it was by John Higgins, who was probably most famously the colorist on Watchmen.
Okay.
But he's done everything. The guy's been a writer. He's been an editor. He's done every job that you can have in comics. And he came out with this mini-series of it's the same story, but it was mini-series because it was broken up into little sections called Razorjack. Well, so finally they put a trade together, which was all those stories put together, and then a couple of extra little stories that he wrote for the trade. And I thought it was going to be great. I really, the premise is amazing, but it's It makes no sense. And kind of like with some of the other stories that we were just talking about, there are things that are thrown in there that seem like they're just there to kind of get a rise. Like, this whole weird BDSM dimension of hell that...
Yeah.
It was so... I don't know if you've ever read this, but...
I haven't, but I looked it up because I thought it was something else. I thought it was from that whole era of like John Sable stuff, because there's another Jack something character.
Yes.
Then.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. I don't know the name, but I know what you're talking about.
And those are really good. But then I looked this up, and I think this is my favorite description. This is what Newsaramas has said about it. It comes off as the Cthulhu mythos mixed with a really nasty episode of Law and Order, and that there are echoes here of Clive Barker and the aforementioned Lovecraft, but those are just part of a stream of ideas that sail along in a much different way due to the comics format.
Yeah.
And your discussion of like hell BDSM, that's so perfect, Clive Barker. That's Hellraiser.
Right, yeah. But I like Hellraiser, and this was almost like I don't even want to say a cheap imitation of it. But here's my thing. I had to review it for one of the websites I write for.
Uh-huh.
And the way I put it and the way it really comes across is, I think John Higgins was having a stream of conscious idea, and he didn't take the time to go back and structure it at all, because the plots don't feel like they really go anywhere. It's such a mess at times. The story, the narrative is just ridiculous. I don't know. It's one of those things that I really think should have been, an amazing book, and just wasn't. But of the ones I'm going to mention today, that's the one I'm willing to forgive the most.
Okay.
Because the next one I want to mention is how Marvel tried to destroy Spider-Man fans. And I know that we have some listeners who are big Spider-Man fans, so I want you to pay extra close attention to what I'm about to tell you. At some point, when Mark Millar, before he had really started going off and doing his own stuff, but he was still working for Marvel at the time, I want to say it was 2003 or something like that.
Okay.
They were like, we're going to put Mark Millar on this book, and we want to tell a Spider-Man story, but it's going to be about Aunt May and Uncle Ben. And subsequently will also kind of be about Peter Parker's parents, right?
Okay.
So... I don't know how to start with this. Basically, the book is called Trouble. It's written by Mark Millar. And I feel bad because a friend actually bought it for me as a gift because he knew I liked Mark Millar. And
can I get a receipt with this, please? This might be going back to the store.
I feel bad because I before I knew what it was about, I was like, yeah, I love Mark Millar. That's cool. No. So basically, it's about Aunt May and Uncle Ben meeting for the first time. And it's 4 individuals, and they have this crazy summer. The covers are of like young, sexy Aunt May with her sister. It gets worse.
That'd be like saying, like, here's a picture of Ma Kent in a bikini. Like, oh no.
It's bad. There are several scenes where, like, she's just wearing a towel. And when I say that, I mean, like...
comic books.
There's the scene where she's holding up a condom. And I was like, that's Aunt May. I know she looks like she's 20 and, young and blonde right now. But you can't not think that that's Aunt May holding up a condom. Like, yeah, if we're going to do this,
Oh, my God.
But here's
was that all this comic was just, like, her and Uncle Ben and Peter's parents, like, all hooking up and having some kind of weird swingers... orgy or something?
It's more about, it's Aunt May, and I want to say it's her friend. I don't think the girl was related to her. And they meet Ben and his brother, whose name is Richie. And basically, it's their summer, and, there's an unexpected pregnancy, of course. And it really felt like reading something like, I don't know, like...
Sounds more like
teen
a Harlequin
drama.
romance.
Yeah, I know. It felt like reading like a teen drama. And the writing wasn't bad, but some of the dialogue felt so contrived. Like,
that's a Mark Millar thing. I don't think he's really good with dialogue. I think he's good with like coming up with story concepts and ways to make people go, "Oh my god, I can't believe you did that." But the moment it gets into dialogue, it's just like it's like Josh Whedon. Josh Whedon doesn't write people who talk the way that people really talk. He writes people that are all snarky and quirky and very witty. People aren't really like that.
Same thing with Kevin Smith. I love Kevin Smith movies, but sometimes you listen to the dialogue and you're like, no one actually talks like that.
Yeah.
But the thought boxes, like where, the comic is kind of explaining itself or the narration, are fine. It's when people actually open their mouths. It's the actual dialogue that. But anyway, the thing that I want to get to, and the reason that I say this is going to destroy some Spider-Man fans' minds here, is if you get to the end of the comic and you pay attention, and I read it, and I didn't see it at first, but I started reading up on some stuff. Apparently, the kind of hidden meaning at the end of this is that there's a chance that in this screwed up universe that Mark Millar has created here for Spider-Man, that Aunt May is actually Peter's mom.
What?
Yeah, I was like, okay, maybe I missed that. So I went back and I was like, maybe this is just like one guy's theory, but no, this is multiple people have said this, and I didn't have the mindset or the urge at all to go back and read it to see if I missed something.
So that's another Mark Millar thing he does. He likes to do these things that are write these moments where people are going to be like, oh my god, or they're just going to sell comics. And that sounds like one of those things he would write, where people would be like, wait, what? And now you're going to go back and buy the entire run, and it's going to look like he sold these comics a lot because people were really into it. When people are more like, is that really what happened? And they buy it.
You know what? I tell you what, I'll loan it to you.
No.
You can read it, and you can tell me if that's actually what happened.
Oh, God. Is this going to be a challenge? Like, I dare you to read this, and we talk about it more?
I think so. I think it is.
All right.
I tell you what, if you read it, I'll reread it. All right.
Okay. All right. I think I can handle that.
All right. But the last one on my list, and this is the one that made me laugh the most.
So first off, let's just say up to this point, out of the five that we've talked about, all of them have had to do with some kind of sex thing that makes them odd to an extent. Giant flying black sperm erupting through uteruses, or mechanical
BDSM
penises.
hell.
Yeah, BDSM hell, Tentacle, the Callisto, raping Storm, or almost raping her. Is this one gonna clinch it?
No,
all of them, 6 for 6.
No, this has nothing to do with sex at all.
Okay.
Actually, I wanted to ask you: have you ever heard the name Chris Cosentino?
No. Does he draw or write comics?
No, he does not, Kyle. That would make sense. He's a chef.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is he a real chef, or is he like a chef in the comic books?
No, he's a chef. He is he has done other stuff, but that when he wrote this comic, his main gig is he is some sort of chef.
Okay.
And I didn't do any research on him, and I know bad Steven, but I didn't have the heart to. But I'm going to tell you what he did. So somehow, and I have no clue how this went down. And again, I should have just researched it, but I was so stunned,
horrified.
Yeah. The reason I know about this comic is one of the guys who writes for Blankman Inc. Will sometimes go to the comic shop, and if he sees something on the shelf that he thinks is like a one-shot that'll make a good review, he'll pick it up, And, Wolverine's one of those characters that, he's got some good, he's got some bad, but it's Wolverine. You kind of know what you're getting into. So there's this comic called Wolverine in the Flesh, and it's by... Chris Consento. I'm never going to say his name right. Or Constantino. That's how you say it. Excuse me. But it's a comic where someone is murdering people and they're cutting them up. And, Wolverine, being the guy that he is, master
He's jealous
tracker.
Because he wants to cut everybody up.
Yes. This master tracker. He says... Because it's in like a small town. It's not like it's in New York. And so he's like, well, I know someone who can help with this case. So he goes and he gets this chef. Who is this guy who wrote himself into this comic. and they solve this murder of this killer who doesn't excrete any bodily fluids, and he doesn't like leave fingerprints or anything like that, which is apparently an actual condition. I did look that part up. That's
okay.
There's an actual condition where you have no facial hair or any type of hair.
He's Wolverine's greatest nemesis because if we can't smell him.
Exactly. Basically, so Wolverine's like, I can't track this guy, so we need to go get this. And so I just want to tell you that this is a really horrible comic. It was painful to read. I found a copy of it and after reading the person's review on Blank Man Inc., I had to find a copy to read this. And at the end, just as promised, the chef blows up about vegetarians. Like, it's
oh my god, so basically this guy wrote this entire comic just so he could have 4 pages to rant about vegetarians.
It wasn't 4 pages, but yeah, that's exactly the way it looked.
Oh my god.
And that, my friends, I just want to say there are some really crappy Wolverine comics.
I don't want to read The Trouble. I want to read
okay.
this.
All
this
right,
sounds atrocious.
You should.
This is like the Muhammad Ali versus Superman comic from back in the day, where it's like, you almost had me on the ropes there. Like, no, he didn't. Shut your mouth. You would have punched his head off the first moment you had a chance. Or what's like, there have been several writers who've written themselves into comics, but the ones that I think Stan Lee's done it. I'm not 100% on that. I know Grant Morrison has done it, and I know that Alan Moore has done it.
Also, a lot of other writers have written Stan Lee into comics. I know that.
Yeah, well, that's different. But to write yourself in there's a level of arrogance, I think. Like, and Grant Morrison wrote himself into the end of Animal Man, but Animal Man was like weird and stupid anyways. And then Alan Moore wrote himself into Swamp Thing, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I vaguely remember hearing about the Grant Morrison Animal Man thing.
But man, to be this guy who's not even a writer, to write yourself into a comic, and then just so you can go off in some spiel about vegetarians. Yeah. I hope this dude is flipping burgers at Burger King.
I just like, I'm
that's
sorry.
The kind of chef he is.
I like the mindset of, I'm Wolverine. I'm an Avenger. I'm an X-Men. There's these murders. Oh crap! I can't smell the guy. I guess I'm boned. What do? Oh, I know. I met this chef one time. Let me go call him. And like the dude walks around most of the comic with a meat cleaver. I don't. You got to see it. You should read it and then we'll talk about it.
Oh my god. Okay.
Man, I'm still saying you should read Trouble also, but if you want to read that one first,
I'll put these on my list of things to read when I'm done reading about thesis garbage.
Okay. All right. But that is my pick for at least of comics I've read. That's my pick for the worst Wolverine comic.
Wow. Ever. And there's a lot of bad Wolverine
There's a lot of bad Wolverine.
But that one sounds like it might be the winner. So there you go, everybody. If you're tired of reading good stuff, we just gave you 6 pieces of garbage you could partake in.
Right.
So
and on that note, next week looks like it's going to be a really good week for comics. So don't bother with that stuff we just mentioned.
Yeah, there you go. Unless you're just a glutton for punishment, you just want to hate comics, or you're sitting there thinking like, God, I spent too much money on comics. What would make me stop? Let me go read these 6. Now I'll never want to spend money on them again. Yeah. All right. So from terrible comics that we didn't like, let's talk about video games that we'd like to see come back.
Yeah.
So what? Recently, there have been several kind of franchises, I guess you could say, that were rebooted, like and successfully. For example, Tomb Raider.
Yes.
One.
So the new Strider just came out.
Yeah, that's true. I haven't played it. I haven't really heard much about it, but it looked good.
Everybody says it's kind of repetitive, but so
that's Strider.
So is the old one. So I think if you like the old one, you'll probably like the new one. And the other one that everybody's talking about right now is Castlevania Lords of Shadow 2, because Lords of Shadow was the big reboot for them.
Mm-hmm. And that was good.
Lords of Shadow was good. Have you read any of the reviews for Lords of Shadow 2?
No, but if it's anything like Lords of Shadow 1, though, it once again is probably uber repetitive at points. Yeah. So.
The problem with the Lords of Shadow 2 is apparently they were extremely rushed, and they cut their team in half and all that, and people say it shows. And they said if you really like the first one, you'll probably still like this one. I'll show you. There's a funny size glitch. Like sometimes in certain parts of the game, your character, the sizing scale doesn't do what it's supposed to, and so like you'll be like 3/4 the size of a door, you know.
That's awesome.
And then the next time you walk by the door, you'll only be 1/4 the size of it.
That seems like a massive glitch they should have caught in troubleshooting. But
like I said,
know.
their team was cut in half and their funding was cut, and they got rushed. So I will play it because I did find the first one. I never beat it. I need to go back and beat the first one, but I enjoyed what I played of it.
All right. Well, Steven, give me, because we're running out of time since we talked so much about terrible comics. Give me two video game systems or video game like franchises you would like to see rebooted.
Okay, so hear me out on this. I like beat 'em up games, right? Mm-hmm. And you know, I was going to say Dino Crisis, but they've already said they're looking at rebooting that one. But I love good old-fashioned beat 'em up games like the old Ninja Turtles game, and I know they just came out with Ninja Turtles Out of the Shadows, but I heard that wasn't as great. But the one I replayed recently was the Avengers arcade game. It was from 1991.
Mm-hmm. That was on Steam, wasn't it?
Was it?
Maybe not. Oh no, I'm thinking the X-Men arcade game was on Steam.
Yeah, that was up there. But the Avengers one was actually really good. It was actually hard. To me, it was a lot harder than the X-Men game, but it had, 4 characters you could choose from. They all had their little special attacks. It was just fun. It was a good classic beat 'em up.
Now, was that the one that had Captain America, Thor, Hawkeye, and Vision?
No, you take Thor and you replace him with Iron Man.
Iron Man.
Yeah.
Okay, I remember that. I played that on the Nintendo.
Right. It was. It was on the NES also. I loved it. It was just a lot of fun. Here's my thing with Avengers 2 getting ready to come out, and with how popular Marvel movies have been, why haven't they capitalized on just a straight-up comic book style beat 'em up? I know they came out with the Marvel Lego game. They've done a couple others. But this one would be, even if you just wanted to HD this one and put it back out there, it would sell,
Well, they kind of have. They have that Marvel Heroes game, and it's basically just Diablo, but with Marvel characters. You just run around punching everything.
Yeah, that's true. But
it's a pay to win game.
Right. And I'm a fan of the old school just beat 'em ups. I really like that X-Men arcade game. I've put so many hours into that game because it's just fun. But yeah.
The 6-person or the 4-person? Because there's 2 versions of it.
Yeah, I have the one that was on Xbox, which was the one that's the 6, I believe.
Mm-hmm. I remember playing the actual 6-person one in an arcade. That's so crazy to have 6 people all around one machine playing.
Yep, that's fun. Magneto is such a pain in that game.
Yeah. All right, so
you'd
love to see that one. What else?
The other one I would really like to see, and I know it's kind of a popular answer, but is the Eternal Darkness series. It came out on the GameCube in, I want to say, like 2002, and it's just an amazingly fun game. It was one of those first games that kind of messed with the player. Like, it would have a cockroach run across the screen at random, but it looked like a real life-size cockroach on your screen. When you'd walk into some rooms, if your insanity meter was too high, you would walk in, but you'd have no head. You would just fall over and die. Yeah. And then my favorite one of all is I'm playing. It's late at night. It's probably like 3 or 4 in the morning. I'm almost done with the game, and I just beat one of the chapters. And it's a really good game. I like the story. And you go to the loading screen, and then it says, "Thank you for playing the Eternal Darkness demo. Buy the full game in 2015 or whatever."
Yeah. And
I, for like a split second, was like, "What?" And then I realized, okay, my insanity meter must have been really high.
Yeah, that's almost like my favorite thing from there would be you're sitting there playing, and suddenly a message pops up that says memory card error block on so-and-so, deleting game, and people go, no, and they jump up. By the time you jump up and get to it, it goes back to the game.
Yeah.
Yeah, man.
That game will screw with you.
That was a good one, and it's a Lovecrafty universe game, but it doesn't go like. See, this is my problem with Lovecraft stuff is that people aren't subtle with it. It's just over the top, like monsters coming from other dimensions. Cthulhu's here. Wow, that's not all Lovecraft. A lot of it should just be horror with that kind of I don't know what it is, but I'm slowly going crazy.
Right.
So I think if they did more games in that universe that are like Eternal Darkness,
they'd be good. Yeah. And my honorable mention would go to Legacy of Kain. I'm not really going to talk about it, but the Soul Reaver series.
Yeah.
But I actually just read not too long ago that they are actually looking into rebooting that anyway. So that'll happen.
Cool. So two of mine are kind of along the same note, and they go to your beat 'em up style game.
Okay, no problem with that.
Double Dragon or Battletoads. I take either one as a reboot.
Well, I take it you saw Double Dragon Neon.
I kind of saw it, but I didn't really read much on it.
It's okay. It's not really as much of a reboot as it's a reskinning, but it's all right.
But see, I think those kind of games were great because you could play with a friend and you just beat them up, have a good time, and they're simple. They're not anything too complicated. They are rage worthy though.
Yeah, I was about to say. Now, Kyle, let's say Battletoads. Did you ever beat the original Battletoads?
Never beat it.
Never
beat it.
My cousin had it, and we made it to the last level. Never beat it, but for about 2 weeks straight. You know the infamous level with the jumping with the surfboards?
Yes.
Yeah, it took us. You just have to memorize it. There's no way past it. You just have to memorize it. Oh,
then it becomes just reflex action because you've done it so much. It's just muscle reflex.
Yep.
So my last one is a one that a lot of people may have never even heard of. Okay, it was a PlayStation game. It was called Tecmo's Deception.
Oh, yeah.
Now, Tecmo's Deception, for those who haven't heard of it, the whole concept is your guy dies. He's brought back to life by some agent of the devil, and you're put in this house. And what you have to do is when people come to the house, you have to set up traps to catch them and either harvest them or kill them or whatever. And the eventual goal of the game is to resurrect the devil. Straight up. I mean, there's no like hinting that, maybe this is how they straight tell you in the beginning that's what you're doing. And that game was so fun. And there were 2 sequels to it, too. They're all on the PlayStation 1, I believe.
Yeah,
I would love to see them redo that. I think that would be great. They will never redo it, though, because the whole concept of the game.
I'm telling you, I think the Japanese might do it. Or maybe they have, and we just don't know it.
That's true. I don't see something like that ever coming over here to America. I'm surprised it came over here then.
Right, yeah. Well,
probably. I played this when I was in high school.
You got to think about it. They probably didn't know what it was about that much, and the internet wasn't big enough for everybody to find out and rage yet.
That's true.
They didn't all see it on Facebook.
That was also back when everybody was just like, it's just one of them video games like Pac-Man. It's okay. It's something my kid play.
Yeah, exactly.
But so, my number one I'd like to see would be a remake of Tecmo's Deception. Some kind of super HD on PC version would just be epic.
That's a good one. That's a really good one.
That'd be so awesome. It's like demonic Minecraft, basically. They put you in a house, you build things and harvest stuff and kill people.
That's a really good explanation for that.
If I had programming skills right now, I would hang up this call in the podcast and I would start making a mod for Minecraft that did that. But I don't, so I can't. So we're still here. All right. So there you go. If there's any games that you think would be cool to reboot, you should let us know. You can email us at comicsandcontrollers@gmail.com. It would be cool to talk about ones that you'd like to see us reboot. Or if there's comics that you think are atrocious also that would make you want to gouge your eyes out, let us know about those.
I'm interested to know what other people think are the worst comics.
Yeah, me too. I mean, you can go all the way back to like Golden Age stuff. Because some of that's cringeworthy, but at the time it wasn't.
Right.
It is now.
Yeah.
So... But we also have a question this week.
Okay.
So we have a question from our listener, Ulysses. This is his second question he sent us. And it kind of references something we talked about last week. So he says, "Hey there, guys. It's Ulysses again. I'm pretty sure you guys have seen the Guardians of the Galaxy trailer and how it really looks more a sci-fi movie than a comic book movie. So although that may not necessarily be a bad thing, a lot of people believe this movie is just a trial run for Disney's Star Wars movie. My question is, how much truth do you guys think that comment has? Did Disney use this movie to see how they could handle the sci-fi elements of a Star Wars movie? Thanks again for taking my question, and keep up the good work. Ulysses."
He's so
Stephen,
polite.
what do you think?
I can't say that I actually 100% agree with that. I think that what they're doing is they're keeping an eye on it because it is a space genre, action space genre, and I'm sure they want to see how it's going to do so that they can kind of keep an eye on the market. But they know that, Star Wars is Star Wars. It's going to make money one way or the other. But it's in their best interest to kind of keep their thumb on the pulse, as it were. But I also think that, as multiple people have pointed out in the company and in other comic companies and other film companies, that Guardians of the Galaxy is a big risk for Marvel. It's not a huge comic. Marvel's not known for their space stuff. These types of movies haven't really been doing well in the past 4 to 5 years. So it will be really interesting to see, if they pull it off. And I'm kind of happy to say that the more I've went back and watched the trailer, the more I'm getting excited for it. I've talked to other people who are actually getting excited for it. And it actually, rewatching the trailer, it reminded me a lot of when we first started seeing trailers for The Fifth Element.
Yeah.
But
it doesn't look like the thing is, it doesn't look like your typical gritty sci-fi space movie.
Right.
It doesn't fit into the Star Trek theme where it's very, almost perfect world and pretty and stuff like that and clean. And then it doesn't fit into like your Alien style where it's dark and horror and gritty. It's this weird comedy with space stuff going on in there.
Yeah.
And that's very, like you said, Fifth Element. I mean, that's Fifth Element to a T. And that is a very huge cult following.
Right. Yeah.
I love that movie.
Yeah, I love it too.
If somebody tells me it's not a good movie, I punch them in the face. Uncontrollably. I cannot. So if you see it, if you don't like it, just don't tell me. I might have to punch you.
All right.
Lulu Dallas multipass.
Yeah, exactly. But but I think they will be keeping an eye on it, but I don't think that was their original intention, because there's so much planning and so many other steps that goes into these. They're not doing this just for that fact. This isn't just a test for Star Wars, but they may be paying attention.
Yeah, and I think that I think Guardians of the Galaxy had already been a plan before the purchase of Star Wars happened. Now that doesn't mean that we don't know how long that stuff is going on in back rooms. I mean, they could have been discussing buying Star Wars for 10 years for all we know.
True.
But I'm pretty sure that Guardians of the Galaxy had already started production by the time they had bought it. And so what they may have done, though, is they may have been like, well, let's put a lot of money into the marketing on this and see how it goes. Like, if we put in twice as much money as we normally do in marketing one of these movies, and it brings in a lot more people, then we probably have a good chance of doing the same thing with Star Wars. Maybe only a little. We don't have to put as much marketing into it because it's an already huge franchise.
Star Wars.
Yeah. Star Wars. Guardians of the Galaxy, everybody I know who's not a comic book person is like, have you ever heard of this thing about raccoons in space?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's actually pretty funny. You need to check it out. Yeah. But what I actually think more is to, rather than trying to see how it affects Star Wars, is I could see this as Marvel/Disney's attempt of creating another ongoing kind of Marvel series of movies. Okay, so they've got the Avengers, and the Avengers has Thor and Captain America and Iron Man. So basically, for one movie, you've got 3 other franchises that come from it or brought it into fruition.
Right.
What if this is an attempt to take a series movie that's got 5 characters and from it spin off other movies that maybe are based around space? Because what about a Nova movie?
Yeah.
You're going to see the Nova core in there.
Right.
So what about actually having an actual Nova movie that stems off of this? What about a Star-Lord movie? I mean, that's probably him and Rocket and him are probably going to be the runaway characters. And
Rocket is about to get his own comic series, so that's not hard to imagine that he might get his own movie if people like them.
Exactly. So I could see it as more of a, let's put this movie out there, let's market the hell out of it. If it does well, then let's spin movies off of this. So we've got 2 different Marvel things going on at the same time. One based on Earth with the Avengers and these characters, and then another one based in space with the Guardians of the Galaxy and those characters. Because, truthfully, what Marvel's ultimate goal is probably to get X-Men and Spider-Man and all those other movies, those big franchises, back from Sony and Fox, so they can actually have a huge universe of stuff going on. But I don't know the whole deal behind that, how or if that will ever happen.
That's going to be a long ways off, because they just extended Fox's deal, I know, for a while. And the way I originally read it on Sony's deal is, as long as they keep making movies by certain times, they're always going to have the ability to re-up the contract. Now, there's stuff that could happen that they could go in legally and, take
or they
that
could start
stuff
asking
back
for a lot more on the contracts than these companies want to pay.
And the thing is that right now, Sony has fought tooth and nail to keep Spider-Man. So I can't imagine they must see that, or in their opinion, that series must be big enough to where they're not going to want to get rid of it. It must be worth paying this price. So I don't think that's going to be anytime soon. The fact that the fact that Marvel just got Daredevil back as part of the extension for Fantastic Four and X-Men is kind of, is interesting because we got Daredevil and Punisher back recently. And
see, that goes back to what I'm saying, is that they're trying to get back a lot of these movie franchises, and that might be part of the deal. Is as time goes on, they keep like, we'll extend the contract, but we want these back. But then when there's nothing more to get back, they're going to be like, we don't feel like extending this contract any further, or we want a lot more money than you're willing to pay, and we'll get it back that way.
Yeah.
Because either way, it's not a loss for Marvel if somebody else has it. The only loss that comes is if they're producing garbage movies, but that's not in the best interest of the studios to do.
Yeah, but like I said, I just don't think that's going to be. It's not going to be like within the next 5 years. This is going to be something that's going to be much further down the line when they finally get those properties back.
Especially when you've still got them each producing huge films for those franchises. Yeah. Like Spider-Man and X-Men will not go back anytime soon. Fantastic Four, depending on how the movie goes, could, because they've already had some bad runs with Fantastic Four. They have another bad run. They could give up on it and just put all their focus on X-Men.
But think about X-Men, like you were just saying. The new X-Men movie isn't even out, and we're already talking about the sequel. Because they're already talking about X-Men Apocalypse, and the X-Men Days of Future Past doesn't come out until like May.
Yeah, it's May. That movie I really want to be excited for, but I'm afraid to be excited for, because the more I think about it, I remember X-Men 3 and how happy I was for that, and then it came out and I was like, what was that crap?
Why would you?
And I have a feeling it's the same thing.
That?
Yeah,
I know. I feel I'm right there with you, man.
So, who knows? But yeah, I don't quite think that Disney/Marvel is doing this as a test for Star Wars, but doing it more as a test to see, is the Guardian of the Galaxy going to be a franchise that's worth spinning more movies off of?
Right.
And if it does as well as the ratings are giving it pre-anything for what people are saying, it probably will. They'll probably at least spin one movie off of it, if not two.
At least one. One.
Maybe I'll finally get my I was trying to think of a terrible space character from Marvel, but then I was like, they're all terrible. So really, where could I go? Moondragon. I'll get my Moondragon movie.
Okay.
Man, Marvel and its space stuff. It's either an amazing character or just the worst thing ever that just makes you want to cry.
I'm actually really afraid that eventually they're just going to do an X-Men movie that's going to be the Phoenix Saga, but it's going to be with the Shi'ar Empire and all that. Because I actually really do love that saga, but that's so much. I imagine them trying to do that movie and it would just fail miserably because you would have so much crammed in there.
I'm just going to leave this thought with you and everybody out there. The X-Men movie I would really like to see would be a dupe movie. If you don't know who Dupe is, just Google it. D-O-O-P, Dupe in Marvel.
Oh, God.
And then you'll be like, why?
Yeah, exactly. Why?
He's Wolverine's best friend also. I'm just going to throw that out there for those of you look him up. He's Wolverine's best friend.
The only thing I ever heard Dupe was actually good in was in Exiles.
He was in Exiles?
For a while, yeah.
Oh, wow. Oh, well. Mutant Green Booger. All right, guys. So I think that's going to wrap it up for this episode of Comics and Controllers. As I said before, if you'd like to send us any emails with questions like Ulysses, or even just make comments on comics you thought were the worst thing ever, or movies or video games that you would like to see rebooted, just give us an email. Send it to us at comicsandcontrollers@gmail.com, and we'll talk about it on the air. If you want to follow me, you can follow me on Twitter at ZombieJesus here. Where can they follow you at, Steven?
At Stephen Wilds. As long as you promise me we'll talk about something good next week.
Can't make that promise.
Okay, well.
No promises.
Follow me on Twitter.
All right. So until next time, I'm Kyle.
I'm Steven.
You guys have a good one.